Imagine a garage, but not the kind you have at home, not the kind you see on MTV Cribs. Imagine a garage so large it requires a map to navigate. A garage that isn't just a building, but a complex of aircraft hangars hidden deep within the humid, steaming jungles of Borneo. Inside this complex, there is silence. The air is thick, heavy with the scent of mildew, damp concrete, and rotting leather. You walk past rows of cars, but not just any cars. You walk past a Mercedes, then another, then another. 500 identical Mercedes SLs, all black, all gathering dust. You keep walking, you see a Ferrari F40, one of the greatest supercars ever made. But it's not red, it's gunmetal gray. And next to it, a green one, and next to that, a yellow one. You turn a corner and see something that shouldn't exist. A Bentley SUV from the 1990s, a Ferrari station wagon, a concept car that was never supposed to leave the Geneva Motor Show floor, yet here it is, sitting on flat tires, its paint bubbling in the tropical heat. This is not a fantasy, this is not a video game. This is the royal garage of the Sultan of Brunei. For decades, it was a myth, a whisper among car collectors. We heard rumors of a collection so vast, it disrupted the global economy. A collection so secret, mechanics had to sign non-disclosure agreements that threatened their lives. A collection of 7,000 cars, valued at over $5 billion. But the most shocking part of this story isn't the cars themselves. It's what happened to them. Because today, this automotive paradise has become a graveyard. The air conditioning was turned off. The jungle is creeping in. And billions of dollars of automotive history are literally rotting away in the dark. Welcome to the story of the greatest and most tragic car collection the world has ever seen. To understand how a collection like this could even exist, you first have to understand the money behind it. And to understand the money, you have to go back to Brunei in the 1990s. Brunei is a tiny nation on the island of Borneo, floating on an ocean of oil and natural gas. In the late 20th century, while the rest of the world was worrying about recessions, the Sultan of Brunei, Hassan al-Bolkiah, and his younger brother Prince Jefri were enjoying wealth that makes Elon Musk look like he's on a budget. We are talking about shutting down a luxury store in London just to shop privately kind of money. But while the Sultan was the head of state, the real architect of this madness was his brother, Prince Jefri. They called him the Playboy Prince. This is a man who owned a mega yacht called Tits and two tender boats named Nipple 1 and Nipple 2. That gives you an idea of the level of seriousness we are dealing with here. In the 1990s, Jeffrey was the finance minister. And boy, did he finance things. The royal family began buying cars, but they didn't buy them like you or I buy cars. They bought them like you buy groceries. If they liked the Mercedes S-Class, they didn't buy one. They bought one in every color. Then they realized they wanted them to match their outfits, so they ordered another 100 in custom shades. At the peak of their spending in the mid-90s, it is estimated that the Sultan and Prince Jefri were spending $500,000 a day on cars alone. Let that sink in. $500,000 every single day. They were buying so many cars that they didn't just become customers, they became the life support system for the entire British luxury car industry. There are rumors, credible ones, that in roughly 1993 to 1995, the Sultan's family purchased nearly 50% of all Rolls-Royces produced. Think about that. If the Sultan stopped buying, Rolls-Royce would have gone bankrupt. Aston Martin? Same story. They were keeping these historic brands alive single-handedly. They had a dedicated team of mechanics, logistical experts, and buyers. They had secret dealerships set up inside the palace grounds just to process the deliveries. Cars were flying into Brunei on 747 cargo planes, fresh from the factory, sometimes 3 or 4 planes a week. But standard cars got boring fast. When you have infinite money, a standard Ferrari Testarossa is just common. It's pedestrian. So they started asking for things, strange things, impossible things. And this is where the collection goes from impressive to mythological. Let's talk about the unicorns. These are cars that, according to the official history books of Ferrari, Bentley, and McLaren, simply do not exist. But in Brunei, they are parked in rows. The Bentley Dominator. Everyone thinks the Bentley Bentayga was the first SUV made by Bentley, right? Released in 2015? Wrong. 20 years earlier, in the mid-90s, the Sultan wanted an SUV, but he didn't want a Range Rover. He wanted a Bentley. Bentley said, "We don't make SUVs, Your Highness." The Sultan said, "Here is a check for several $1,000,000. Make me an SUV." So they did. It was called the Bentley Dominator. They built 6 of them. Bright yellow, red, gray. They were built on Range Rover chassis but with bespoke Bentley bodywork and interiors. Each one cost around $4.6 million. Until a few spy photos leaked years later, nobody knew these existed. They are the grandfathers of the modern luxury SUV, born purely because one man wanted to go off-roading in a drawing room. The Ferrari 456 GT Venice. Prince Jefri wanted to go for a drive with his family or perhaps carry luggage, but he wanted to do it in a Ferrari. Now, Ferrari is famous for never compromising. They don't do 4-door saloons until the Puro Sangue, and they certainly don't do station wagons, unless you buy 7 of them. The Sultan ordered 7 Ferrari 456 GT station wagons, designed by Pininfarina. They are beautiful, strange, elongated shooting brakes. Rumor has it the Sultan bought 6, and the 7th was sold to a private collector in London because the prince didn't like the color. If you ever see a Ferrari station wagon in London, you're looking at a reject from the Brunei royal family. The mythos and the concepts. Usually, concept cars are design studies. They are made of clay and fiberglass. They have no engines. They are for show. The Sultan didn't care. He saw the Ferrari mythos concept at a motor show, a wild wedge-shaped speedster based on the Testarossa. He wanted it. Ferrari said, "It's a show car." The Sultan said, "I'll take 2, fully functional, with engines." So Pininfarina built them. Fully drivable concept cars that were never meant to see a road. He did the same with the Bentley Java. This was a concept car that predicted the Continental GT years before it came out. He liked the look of it, so he paid Bentley to build a fleet of them. Some coupes, some convertibles, some wagons. He essentially forced car manufacturers to bring the future into the present, just for him. The Ferrari F40 is a sacred car. It was the last Ferrari personally approved by Enzo Ferrari himself, and it exists for one purpose only: to be raw, brutal, and uncompromising. It normally comes in one color, Rosso Corsa Red, with a bare carbon fiber interior, no carpets, no sound insulation, and absolutely no concern for comfort. This isn't a supercar, it's a road-legal race car. And out of everything in this entire collection, this is genuinely one of my personal favorite cars ever made. But to the Sultan, even something this pure wasn't beyond modification. He wanted F40 painted in colors Ferrari never intended: gunmetal gray, black, yellow, even white. The stripped-out racing interiors were removed and replaced with plush leather seats. Air conditioning was added. Power windows were installed. Ferrari, a company famous for telling customers no, quietly said yes when faced with the Sultan's checkbook. Roughly 7 to 10 F40 were modified like this, transforming one of the most hardcore supercars in history into something far more civilized. To purists, it was sacrilege. To the Sultan, it was simply comfort on his own terms. The McLaren F1s. And then there are the holy grails. The McLaren F1. Only 106 were ever made. The Sultan owns 10 of them. He owns 3 of the ultra-rare F1 LM models. There were only 5 LMs ever sold to the public. He owns 3. 2 of them are painted in a special black and gray graphic scheme that no other F1 has. For years, McLaren historians were terrified. They knew these cars were in Brunei, but they didn't know if they were surviving. We'll get to that in a minute. It wasn't just the uniqueness of the cars that made this collection unbelievable. It was the scale. Because hidden behind the palace walls, there existed something most people still don't believe was real: a secret dealership built solely to manage the Sultan's obsession. The logistics of this collection were a military operation. In the 90s, mechanics from Aston Martin, Rolls-Royce, and AMG were flown into Brunei on rotation. They lived in the capital, Bandar Seri Begawan, and their entire job was to service cars that were never driven. They would go to the hangars, some of them multi-story with elevators, and start the cars. Imagine your job is to walk into a room with 100 Rolls-Royces. You start engine number 1, let it warm up, check the fluids, turn it off. You move to number 2. By the time you finish the row, it's time for lunch. By the time you finish the room, it's been a week. They had a system. The cars were kept in air-conditioned hangars, dehumidified to protect the leather and the electronics from the brutal Borneo humidity. It was a perfect ecosystem. As long as the oil money flowed and the brothers got along, the cars were safe. But in 1997, the music stopped. The Asian financial crisis hit. Currencies collapsed. And back in Brunei, a massive scandal erupted. The Sultan discovered that Prince Jefri's spending had gone a little too far. We're talking about an alleged $14.8 billion missing from the state funds. The feud between the brothers was catastrophic. Prince Jefri was stripped of his position as finance minister. His assets were frozen. He fled the country. And the cars? The cars became evidence. But then, almost overnight, everything stopped. And when the money disappeared and the machines were shut down, the greatest car collection on Earth began to slowly destroy itself. This is the part of the script where car lovers might want to look away. When the feud started, the money for the maintenance crews was cut. The mechanics from Aston and Rolls-Royce were sent home. The secret dealerships were shuttered. And then the worst thing possible happened. They turned off the air conditioning. You have to understand the climate of Brunei. It is a tropical rainforest. It is hot, 30 degrees Celsius plus year-round, and incredibly humid, 80 to 90% humidity. For a car, this is a death sentence. Without climate control, moisture began to settle on the cars. In the cold, dark concrete hangars, mold began to grow. It started on the steering wheels, fuzzy white mold eating the leather. Then the foam inside the seats began to disintegrate. The rubber seals on the windows dried out and cracked, letting more moisture in. The electronics, the sensitive ECUs of the 1990s, corroded. Recent photos leaked by brave souls who managed to sneak a phone into the garages show a horror show. We see a Porsche 959, a $2 million car, sitting on flat tires covered in a thick layer of gray dust. We see rows of Mercedes S-Class sedans with their interiors literally melting. The soft-touch plastics of the 90s turn into a sticky, tar-like goo in the heat. The steering wheels have melted onto the driver's seats. There are stories of a Lamborghini Countach where the leather dashboard warped so badly it shattered the windshield from the inside. But it gets worse, because the cars were left sitting with fuel in them. Gasoline doesn't last forever. Over time, it turns into a varnish. It clogs fuel lines, seizes fuel pumps, and rots gas tanks. So now, you have thousands of cars that are not just cosmetically damaged, but mechanically seized. Some of the cars were parked outside because the hangars were full. There are photos of Rolls-Royce Silver Spurs rotting in the tall grass, vines growing through the wheel arches, the Spirit of Ecstasy hood ornament looking out over a jungle that is slowly reclaiming the metal. It is a $5 billion graveyard, so the question becomes inevitable. Did anything survive? Or did every single car in Brunei's royal garages meet the same slow, humid death? Is it all gone? Is every car dead? Thankfully, the answer is a complicated no. The Sultan isn't totally oblivious to the value of his fleet, especially the blue-chip legends. According to recent intelligence from insiders and high-end brokers, a clear hierarchy has formed within the garage. The hero cars, the ones worth 8 or 9 figures, have been moved, while the rank-and-file Mercedes-Benzes rot in the jungle heat. The McLaren F1s, the Ferrari F40s, and those impossible one-off concept cars are reportedly housed in a separate, smaller, and strictly climate-controlled facility closer to the main palace. These crown jewels are safe, and occasionally they even leave the island. In a move that sent shockwaves through the enthusiast community, one of the Sultan's 3 McLaren F1 GTs, the ultra-rare Longtail, was recently spotted at London Heathrow. It wasn't there for a vacation. It had been flown back to McLaren Special Operations, MSO in the UK, for a full factory-level restoration. Shortly after, another blue F1 followed. These cars are being meticulously maintained because the royal family knows they aren't just cars. They are appreciating assets worth over $20 million apiece. But what about the rest? In the early 2000s, a liquidation team was actually brought in to see what could be salvaged to recoup some of the billions lost in the Prince Jefri scandal. The experts walked through the hangars, clipboards in hand, and what they found was a tragedy. Thousands of cars had already crossed the point of no return. When the cost to ship, demold, and mechanically resurrect a 1995 S-Class exceeds its market value, it becomes a financial total loss. To a billionaire, it's easier to let it melt into the floor than to fix it. However, a few lucky survivors have escaped the Borneo graveyard. Occasionally, a unicorn appears at an elite auction in London or Abu Dhabi with royal provenance and delivery mileage. Just recently, a McLaren F1, chassis 014, with the high downforce kit, once a centerpiece of the Brunei collection, surfaced for sale with an estimate of over $21 million. We've seen a Cizeta 516T make it to the US, and a handful of those legendary Ferrari 456 Venice wagons have been spotted prowling the streets of London, looking as fresh as they did in 1996. But for every car that escapes, 100 more remain trapped. For every McLaren F1 being restored in Woking, there are dozens of custom Bentleys and Ferraris whose tires have flattened, whose leather has turned to dust, and whose engines will never turn over again. They are the ghosts of a billion-dollar dream, waiting for a rescue that, for most of them, will never come. In the end, the Sultan of Brunei's car collection isn't just about cars. It's about excess, power, and a moment in history that will never happen again. The Sultan of Brunei's car collection is the ultimate automotive Rorschach test. To some, it is a tragedy, a multi-billion-dollar waste of engineering, art, and history. To others, it's the ultimate flex, Wealth so vast and indifferent that letting a one-of-six Ferrari rot into the pavement is no different than discarding a banana peel. But if we look closer, this collection is more than just a graveyard. It's a time capsule. It captures a singular, unrepeatable moment in human history. The absolute peak of the 1990s oil boom, the era of raw, analog supercars, and a level of unrestrained royal spending that we will likely never see again. Paradoxically, the Sultan's garage served as a strange kind of automotive ark. While thousands of cars are currently being reclaimed by the jungle, the sheer volume of his obsession actually kept the industry alive. In the 1990s, the Sultan and Prince Jefri weren't just customers. They were the primary shareholders of the dream. By ordering hundreds of bespoke vehicles, they provided the critical cash flow that saved brands like Bentley and Aston Martin from certain bankruptcy. Without the Sultan's checkbook, the Bentley Continental GT might never have been funded. The experimental carbon fiber tech and sequential gearboxes developed for his unicorn Ferraris eventually trickled down into the hypercars of today. In a bizarre twist of fate, the man who let 7,000 cars rot is the same man who ensured the world's most prestigious manufacturers survived to build the cars we love now. So while it's heartbreaking to think of those F40s sitting in the dark, their leather turning to mold and their electronics corroding in the humid Borneo air, we have to admit, the car world is infinitely more interesting because this collection exists. It remains the greatest what-if in history. What if the doors finally swung open? What if the world's largest auction was announced tomorrow? What if you could actually bid on a project Ferrari F40 for the price of a used Camry because it needed a total interior restoration? We can dream. But for now, the gates of the royal hangars remain shut. The Gurkha guards still patrol the perimeter, and the high-voltage fences hum in the tropical night. Inside, in the heavy, silent heat of the jungle, the world's most expensive sleeping beauties continue to sleep, slowly turning back into the elements from which they were made. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the world's most secretive garage, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We're constantly tracking down the world's most incredible automotive stories, and you won't want to miss our next investigation. Now, I want to hear from you. If you were given a key and told you could rescue one car from the Sultan's graveyard, regardless of its condition, which one would you pick? Would you take the world's first Bentley SUV, the one-of-seven Ferrari station wagon, or would you try to save a McLaren F1? Let me know in the comments below, and let's get the discussion started.